Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gland Bodybuilding, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about proprioception or mind-muscle connection or coordination or whatever words you want to put to it. Mountain. And this subject's coming from a commenter in the comment section. Funny enough, how dare a commenter be in the comment section? But that's where it's coming from. But at the same time, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to show you a workout I just did yesterday. This is a chest and back workout. Sometimes I'll do higher volume, sometimes I'll do lower volume. And in this workout, I'm only doing 2 different exercises. That's all I'm doing. But I'm starting off with bench presses with more of a flared elbow technique. So that's why I'm using lighter weight. I'm just going to 225 today. Sometimes I go up to 245. But I find if I'm going to touch my chest and go up higher on the chest in order to get that pec stretch, it's better for me to use more of a lighter weight, like 15 to 20 reps. Hence, I do feel like I isolate the pecs better because I can use that right technique for that certain muscle group, like I've talked about a lot of times for you guys, but in case you're here for the first time, I have to explain that a little bit. But this spurs an interesting sort of discussion because somebody in the comments just asked about mind-muscle connection, and they noticed that when they use heavier weight, they're not able to feel the muscle contract as well, or maybe there's a certain muscle that they find that they're not hitting properly, and they're noticing that they're getting better mind-muscle connection from lighter weight. Now, first things first, I want to say that it's never really lightweight versus heavyweight, because one could argue that because you have to fire the muscles so hard when you use heavyweight, that you actually develop a better connection to all the muscles in the area. Now, that's not the same as isolation, but one could say that it's better for getting those, what do you call it, the motor units firing properly and building motor unit recruitment in the area when you're using heavy weight. That's why getting stronger, safely of course, is a great way to gain muscle over the long run, because you're establishing those, well, let's just say it's an electric power grid in the area to be able to fire all the muscle fibers around that area. Now, that said, as you're using heavy weight for a long period of time, you may notice that some muscles are firing more than others, and you're not necessarily isolating a certain muscle you want to get because you're changing your technique in order to lift as much weight as possible. Now, once you start hitting that threshold, then it's time to do exactly what I'm doing. See here on bench, right? I'm actually adjusting my technique, even though I'm stronger with a different technique. I'm adjusting my technique in order to isolate the pecs, because I'm noticing I'm getting these other areas taking over, and it's basically establishing muscle growth in other areas, but not the area I want to hit, which is the chest itself. So you have to make that decision at some point, but it's not about lightweight being better. If anything, I would say if you're going to make a blanket statement, I would say lightweight is worse for establishing mind-muscle connection in the overall body. Like, it's because when you overload explosively in an area, your body naturally has to build that nervous system firing sort of mechanism to establish the ability to create effort. You notice this when you use like super heavy weight, even if it's a partial range, you'll notice there's a certain, I don't know, a different gear that you access to fire the muscles. And I'm not saying you're supposed to do this all the time, but I'm just saying there's a phenomenon that goes on that forces you to fire in a way never fired before. So you notice this when you're using, like, say, elastic bands, right? Because you don't have the threat of the weight collapsing on you. Sometimes, even though the elastic band is at the same tension level as, say, a bench or a squat that you could naturally do. So say you could lift 300 pounds, and then the elastic band is set for 300 pounds. Sometimes it's harder to lift the elastic band because you don't have that threat, almost like that negative eccentric threat coming down to crush your chest, to establish that adrenaline or that, and let's just say that fear program to push that weight off of you. I don't know. There's something that happens when the weight is going to fall on you that puts you into overdrive that basically helps establish that contractile sort of energy. Now, again, you don't want to overdo that, but I would say it's more powerful for establishing some sort of explosive firing of muscle tissue in the area. right? As a general rule. But as bodybuilders, we want to isolate certain areas because sometimes the areas that we want to get bigger and stronger are not getting bigger and stronger because, of course, our strong areas that are already strong sometimes will take over. So that's why you start to change techniques. That's why you start to adjust over time. First, you gain some strength, and then you realize, okay, this is what's happening. Now I need to micromanage my techniques with lighter weight in order to get that deeper connection with certain areas that seem to be, let's just say, pushed to the side because you're so busy trying to lift the weight at any cost, right? So that's where you really have to check the ego aside. That's where you really have to say, okay, what's my main goal? Is it to gain muscle, or is it to look strong? Is it to look strong on Instagram or YouTube or in front of the girls at the gym, you know? Or maybe the girls at the gym are stronger than I am, so I want to make sure I don't look so weak in comparison to them, so I got to change my technique. You know, you got to throw all those games out the door. And once you do that, then you can start properly isolating a muscle. But that does not mean by any means excluding heavyweight all the time because you just want to isolate, because I do feel that there is a benefit to using heavyweight, of course. So a lot of times people like to just come up with one rule, you know, like just do this and you're going to get better mind-muscle connection. Just use lightweight or just use this program or this technique or whatever. But I thought it'd be good to discuss a couple of other techniques or ways that people establish strength. And one of those ways that people get better strength in their training program or better mind-muscle connection, right? Because they're almost the same thing, aren't they? Because when you have better mind-muscle connection, meaning coordination, not necessarily the ability just to fire one muscle, but say you have better coordination, you're able to find the perfect groove in order to lift more weight. So you do actually get stronger, right? And that's something that a lot of people overlook, is that if you just get more coordinated, that plays a big role in strength. So when you're doing lots of sets, one could definitely say that you're getting more coordinated, at least before the fatigue takes over. You are getting more coordinated in doing a certain movement, right? If you want to get better at performing any movement, repetition plays a huge role. Practice, right? Practice makes perfect. It's just you practicing that movement over and over again, you're going to get better at it. So in this way, sometimes high volume, once in a while, can help you establish a certain level of mind-muscle connection and coordination, right? You get that big pump and you start noticing over and over again. You keep on, hitting the rack or hitting that exercise, and you start noticing, okay, what muscles are actually firing, which ones aren't firing, and you start to, put this data in your mind somewhere through experience. You start to experience, okay, that set I moved this way and I felt this muscle, and then the next set I moved this way and I felt that muscle. Okay, here's what's going on, and you start to get some sort of deep immersion, some intimate immersion into that exercise, because you're constantly hitting that same thing. So it's forcing you to drill deep into a connection to that exercise. And basically you start micromanaging the movement to really feel like, what is the most efficient way to fire the muscles I want to hit? And if you guys, are seeing me bent over row and you're like one of those guys who's saying, Jason, you're supposed to be parallel to the floor with your upper body. Watch my video called The Most Misunderstood Bodybuilding Exercise, and I explain the bent over row there. So that will really help you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing here. If you're getting all triggered and whatever, just trust me on this. Just watch it. You'll see why I'm doing what I'm doing with the bent over row, and then you'll understand why I have a biggity back. But anyway, that aside, a high amount of volume can help sometimes, assuming that you're not overly fatiguing your entire system, which is why the German volume training sometimes comes into play. The guys don't hit failure in their sets, and they basically just do lots of sets. It's really like a glorified practicing the movement to make sure it's perfect, with the muscular fatigue almost taking the back seat, where it happens by the time the 10th set comes around, but you're not necessarily pushing muscular fatigue as the main thing. In these sets today, though, I'm actually trying to fatigue the muscle. I'm kind of like just, doing sets that are close to failure actually, and just going for it. That's what I did for my whole workout, just for fun. Sometimes you just got to make it fun, right? Now, the other thing that people don't realize and didn't realize when I was training in competitions and stuff is that high frequency training really helps mind-muscle connection. It really helps your coordination. You'll find that your groove with certain weights all of a sudden becomes less shaky, more certain, really refined. You start to notice that weight that used to feel heavy to you all of a sudden feels light. Well, these are all signs that you're basically making a better mind-muscle connection or better groove connection. Now, because of this, just naturally, because your awareness is exploding in these areas, you'll naturally notice that it'll be easier for you to understand how to isolate a muscle, because it all starts with awareness, right? So I find that high frequency training, 2-day split type training or whole body workouts, basically training the body parts more frequently through the week is another way. It's not the only way, but it's another way to also expand your mind-muscle connection. So if you have never tried higher frequency training, I would recommend trying a 2-day split. If you've been doing 4-day splits or bro splits, I really recommend doing a 2-day split for a period of time just to see how you respond to it. And of course, your volume is going to be lower. You're not going to be doing as much work in the gym on a daily basis for a muscle group, but overall in the week, you're pretty much doing the same amount as you normally would with a bro split, right? So that's the thing. I know I don't measure volume on a weekly basis. I know I had a couple guys come to me and say, oh, well, I got 20 sets with the bro split, but I'm only getting 15 sets with 2-day split. Oh, does that mean I'm losing out? And I'm like, well, you have to look at the quality of your sets. And if you're primed and pumped and full of energy to really push sets into failure for the first 5 or 6 sets, and then after that, you're noticing that you're just kind of able to do half sets or not really that many reps because fatigue has taken over. One could argue that some of those sets are not as high quality as the first sets when you have perfect energy sources available in order to push those muscle fibers into failure. So that's a whole other discussion, but the bottom line is that a general volume, I don't measure volume as far as a weekly volume, because the quality of volume is also important to look at. And once again, there's this oversimplistic sort of view of things on the internet where people take one variable and then they just basically say, okay, this is the one variable that matters, all the other ones don't. But yeah, that's a couple of ways that you guys can expand your proprioception and your mind-muscle connection. I hope this helps you in your training, and let me know if you enjoyed this type of training program, type video, type talkie, type mountain thing, and I'll talk to you again. Mountain. Natural land.